and welcome to JavaScript Evangelist. Today we are going to create a complete Angular 4 web application and also add continuous integration with CircleCI. I assume you have basic knowledge of HTML and CSS, JavaScript and Angular 2. Well, it all started with me when I applied for Backbase front-end developer position online. I really love how fast Backbase as a company accelerated in 5 years. From a startup to a big product company now. I admire their work culture. Technologies for building banking applications. This is the app which we are going to create. Develop this using Angular 4. It also makes a network request to transactions.json file, and you can sort them all by date. You can sort them all by beneficiaries, so the color matches, and you can sort them all by numbers, so basically the amount, and you can even search. I can type it like this. All right, the transaction on the left hand side, make a transaction component. Basically it's just a dummy component for now. The email states only that you have to finish the assignment within 24 hours. It does not state what and how you have to build. So I'm going to assume that I can use any framework of my choice, since there was no point of contact to ask questions, since I had very little time to finish the assignment. The assignment is just a single JPG. As you can see over here, this is the design, and it only states nothing. It's basically that's all you have. So you have to figure how it is going to behave. So I'm assuming if you start typing over here, they are expecting us to do a search with the existing data. It is not possible to create a network request since they haven't provided any API. Then we have this date filters, beneficiaries. So we have filters, then we have this make a transaction component. If you look at the mock, so this is the transactions.json. I'm soon going to show you that. We have these assets. The assets have a background image. Then we have this arrows. Logo is perfect, but the problem with the icons is they are not transparent. There is a white background image. But if you look at the mock design, the design states that they are transparent. So I'm going to quickly make them transparent using Photoshop. Get started by scaffolding our project. I'm going to use Angular CLI, ng new Backbase app, and it creates all the scaffolding for us as well. It creates a folder for us. So while everything is getting installed, let's just see how we are going to generate our components. So what I'm thinking over here is this top area, I'll make a different component for this. So probably we can call this as a header, and below section we can put this inside our app root. So app root will have two other child components. The first child will be make a transfer component, and the other one will be recent transactions. And again, inside recent transaction we are going to have two more child components. So the first one will be the search filters, and the second one will be the transaction row. If you have to think about Angular's philosophy, it's basically the way you create a web application with Angular is you have to create a lot of web components, and you combine those web components and you basically make an app. For this video, make a transfer component, which is going to be just a dummy component, because you can't really make an online transfer. You need an API like Stripe or some dummy API, which will take much more time, and which is again not of it's not a part of front end. I'm sure some of you can give it a try and post here in the comments. I'll try my best to help you out. The other section, or I would say the other component, that is recent transactions component, which is going to have transaction row component and search filter component. So let's get started by generating those. Also, once we have our desired HTML and CSS added, we can write our JavaScript code to get the dynamic application behavior. So just cd to the project app and just type ng serve. Please note I'm going to use WebStorm as my IDE for this project. And as you can see, the ng serve command has finished successfully, and Webpack has compiled. So let's just view how it is looking right now in our browser. So it is serving at 4200. If you look at the app structure, the only thing which we have is the app module, the entire SRC structure. So we have app, assets, environments. Ignore about the environments. So inside the assets, I'm going to copy paste the assets which I got from the email. I'm going to paste it inside my assets. I'll just paste it here. And also you can see I have made this icons transparent. Let's get started by generating our web components. The only component which we have currently right now is the app component, which is like this. So I'm going to go to my terminal, and the first component which I'm going to generate is ng generate component header, which will just contain our logo. The other component which I'm going to generate is basically they're going to do more components, but they're going to be inside our app component. So app component will contain header as well as our main component, which will contain make a transfer and recent transactions. So let's see how we are going to do that. Let's just first simply add the app header, which we just created. After this, I'm going to add two more components, but they are going to be wrapped inside an HTML tag called main. And let's just scaffold the components first. G for generate component make transfer. All right. And after this, I'm going to add one more component that is going to be recent transactions. Inside recent transaction, we are going to need two more child components, and these two components are going to be dummy components. Dummy components means they will not connect to any of the services. They'll just receive the data and play with the data. But the connecting to the database or connecting to the services is going to be done only inside our dynamic component, that is recent transactions component. So I'm going to generate two more child components, that is this one. I'll just show you what I mean. So we are inside recent transaction. Recent transaction is divided into two components. The first one is search filters and second one is transaction row. All right, so I'll just an ngg generate and component. I'll just make it search filters component, and another component which is going to be transactions row. Okay, and if you look at the project structure now, so inside the app folder you have header, make, transfer, recent transaction, search filters, transaction row. All right, so we have the components inside our app folder now. So we have all these components which we just generated. So going back to the app component HTML, I'm going to add two child components inside our main HTML tag. So this is going to be app make transfer component. After that, I'm going to add recent transactions component. Inside recent transactions HTML, we are going to add two more components, but I'm going to wrap them inside a section HTML tag, and I'll also give it a class called recent transactions. Inside recent transaction, we are going to have app slash search filters, and after search filters we are going to have app slash transactions row. I'm going to remove app search filters, and let's just concentrate only on app transaction row. And first of all, let's view how our app is actually looking right now in the browser. So that's all how it looks. It's all dummy things. So let's just quickly add the HTML and CSS for the header and as well as for the background. I assume you have a basic understanding about the styles, that is CSS, and I'm quickly going to just type it out, the CSS. After this, I'm going to add a background image to my HTML body. By the way, about the font, I'm just using Google font. Also, the assignment did not came with any font. So basically, I just went on Google and searched for the closest font matching to the assignment, which is given over here. I think this is some paid font, maybe probably Helvetica, but I'm going to use Open Sans. So I'm just going to go to my index.html, and after the favicon, I'm going to add my link to the Google font. And let's see how it looks. The background is already inside my assets. All right, the background is already looking good. The font is also loaded nice. Let's just style the header now. Since header has a logo, assuming the app design which is given to us, I'm just going to assume that it is 1200. You can open this up in Photoshop and calculate the width and height. The width I'm saying 1200 because I'm going to use Flexbox. So Flexbox makes it really easy to make a responsive website. So we'll soon see that. Let's just quickly add header HTML for us. All right, let's view it how it looks. So that's all how it is looking right now. We need to add the CSS for the header as well. Header component CSS. So whatever CSS I write over here, even if I type a section and I just give it a styling, this section will dynamically get an attribute, something like this, ng hyphen and some number. So this style sheet will be applicable only for the header component. So you don't have to worry about anything that this style will spill out somewhere else. So also make sure to watch my video on basics of web components and shadow DOM. Let's see how it looks. And you can see it's looking good. So I'm quickly going to add the HTML for the style sheet for the recent transactions as well. And let's see how it looks. So our recent transaction is looking good. And also quickly add the HTML for make transfer and also the CSS for the make transfer. Is going to be just a dummy component. It is not going to connect to any services. And also add the style sheet. And let's see how it looks. Also, there is one important thing over here. So basically make a transfer component, which is this class. And also if you look at the recent transactions component HTML, they both are section and has a different class. they don't have any by default any width. Let's see how it looks. So that's how it is looking currently, but we need to make sure they are getting divided inside the 1200 width. So if you look at the parent, so I'm going to go to the app component CSS. The main thing which I'm going to do is I'm going to give a width to our main tag over here. All right, let's see how it looks. And you can also see that I'm setting the display to WebKit Flex, and the flex direction is set to row, and margin auto makes it center line. All right, that's how it looks. And let's just inspect them. So our main div has a width of 1200. Now we have to make sure the make transfer and recent transactions gets allocated a specific width. So if you look at main has a HTML tag called make transfer. Then we have app recent transaction. So I'm going to target these two tags in the CSS of app component CSS. So this two gets a width of 100 pixels and margin of 10 pixels. And let's see how it looks. So they both have same width now, that is 100 pixels. But there is going to be a trick. I'm going to use that with Flexbox. That is, you'll see soon. So basically I'm saying that whatever app make transfer width it has, with respect to the ratio of the parent, I'm going to give it a 1/3, and this is why we'll get the rest of it. And let's refresh and see how it looks. All right, it's already occupying the width as per the mock designs. Let's just quickly add the HTML for the transactions row. I know I'm going a little bit fast over here because I feel HTML and CSS is really easy, and anyone can learn HTML, CSS and making a responsive website design within a day. If you need help learning how to create a complete HTML, CSS website from a Photoshop file to an HTML and then CSS, then adding responsiveness to the CSS, it's really easy. Ask me out, I'll help you out. So if you look at the recent transactions component, that is this entire section over here. Inside this we have transaction row. I'm going to go inside transaction row, HTML. So transactions row component HTML will have certain row and some HTML that we are going to loop over our content. So transactions container, or maybe you could call it as a transaction row, it's up to you. So inside this transactions container, I'm going to have the UL and LI. So LI will be looping over the transactions log. I'll remove this for you if you want. I'll remove all this because I had written the HTML for this before, and I'm just simply going to remove them all, just so that it will be easier when we create the transaction log model, so you will understand how it is working. And if you look at the app now, so this is how our structure is looking. We have this main HTML tag. Inside the main we have our two web components, that is make transfer and recent transactions. Recent transaction is divided with a section, and the section has app transactions row. This is this part, and app transactions row has another section div called transaction container, and we have this HTML now. All right, so let's actually connect to the data now, and to do that I'm going to create a service now, and also I'm going to remove this make a transfer from the app components because it's occupying a little bit space in my browser. So let's just start creating the service. ngg component, ngg service, and the service name is transactions. Transaction service, but I want this transaction service to be inside the core folder inside my app, and I'll just name it as services, and the service name is transactions. Okay, and we also got the warning of service created but not provided. If you have seen my previous video, whenever we generate a service, you have to also add it to the ng module of the app. Before that, let's just see where the service is created. So our service is created inside core services transaction service. So this service, we need to add it to the app module under the providers, and I'm just going to hit Alt Enter, and WebStorm will smartly add it, import it over here. I'm just going to disable few of my TS-lint settings. So our transaction service is now behaving as a singleton service. It will be instantiated inside our whole app only once. So inside the transaction service, I'm going to make a call to the transactions JSON file, which is inside our assets, which is over here. So transactions JSON file is this. But before making a call to the transactions JSON file, I'm going to create a model of our data. So I'm just quickly going to create one more folder inside our core, that is going to be model, and the model will have a new file, TypeScript file, and that is going to be a single transaction model. And I'm just going to export. This is going to be an interface called transaction. Look at the transactions JSON file. You have amount, that is going to be, it should be a number, but in this case, since the JSON file is providing us as a string, we have to keep the type of the amount as a string. Category string, merchant string, merchant logo, which is an image, going to be received as a string. And let's see what else we have over here. Okay, I'll just go at the bottom. So after the image, we have transaction date, which is a number. Then we have the transaction type, which is a string. All right. So this is how our interface looks like. Let's just go to the transaction service, and I'm going to inject a service called HTTP as a private. So I'm going to add underscore HTTP private variable, and it is going to be get injected as HTTP of the Angular HTTP. I'm going to have a public method over here called get. So basically transactions service dot get, maybe I'll say get all, because I'm going to get all the transactions, and this service, so this function is going to be returning me an type of observable, and this observable is going to be containing a lot of transactions. So the transaction model as an array. So let's just simply make a call, make a get request to the transactions JSON file. So what I'm going to do is, first of all, I'm going to return the data from the HTTP service. So this .http.get, and I'm going to add the transactions, which is inside our assets. And once we get the data, the JSON data, So observables, we need to modify the data. So I'm going to map the data, the response, whatever we receive, we are going to map the response to the response.json. So it will be a readable data for us. And also we don't need the data node of this JSON file. If you look at the top, please go at the top. Okay, so it is all the data is bind inside. So these are all the transactions. So it is bound inside the data node, and I don't want this data node. I just want this transactions array. So I'm going to map the JSON and I'm going to return the data. Also, we can do one more thing. We can do the console log over here with the rxjs do operator. I'll just type console.log and it will log out the data for us. Also make sure you have added the map and do rxjs operator inside your main.ts file. You can import them over here also, but I prefer to import my rxjs operators or operations inside main.ts file. So inside my main.ts file, I'm going to import rxjs do and map operator, and the operator map and the do operator from the rxjs. So I have added the style, and let's see how it looks. And it's already looking good. And just refresh again. And if you look at the style sheet for each li, you'll notice that each of the span, some of the width, like the bar has a width, but rest of the widths, they are all percentage based. Means if I modify the width of the parent container, they'll try to adjust. Okay, so making a web app responsive, it's really easy. All you have to add is a few media queries and set the desired width on the breakpoints, and you're good to go. Let's just simply add the search filters component now. I feel I'm going to add search filter component inside the transactions row, since it is going to just manipulate the data, which is this one, after receiving the async transactions. So I'll just simply add the app search filters, and let's see how it looks. Okay, I'm just quickly going to add the HTML and CSS for the search filters component. And let's see how it looks. All right, I'll also add the CSS for the search filter component. Let's see how it looks. Okay, it's already looking good. It's not modifying the data, which is over here. It's neither having anything over here. So I'm going to start the filter, the search function first. So going back to the search filter component, creating a search is really easy. All we have to do is just output the search term typed by the user. So whatever the value is typed over here, we need to pass this value, the term, to the transactions over here and filter them out. So simply I'm just going to add an output over here which emits an event. So the event name is going to be on search. So whenever somebody types inside the search, which is going to be a new event emitter. Okay, on search, so all we have to do is we have to call a function. Maybe the function name can be handle search. So let's just see. So this handle search function will emit the value which we are going to pass. So this dot on search, so this function will trigger this event, and this will emit a value, whatever value we pass it over here. And this function will be triggered on the key up of this input field. So on this input, I'm going to add a function called on maybe key up. So whenever there is a key up, we are going to trigger this function, and I'll just give it a reference ID. The reference ID is going to be search input, and I'm just going to pass the search input dot value. You can even do the console log over here to see that we are receiving a value over here, and just simply going to refresh the browser now. And if you look at the console, whenever we type something, it gets printed out. But we have to catch this value inside our transactions row component. I think instead of naming this as handle search, I'll just say search input. And just update the function over here. So whenever there is a search input, we are going to emit a value. So inside the transactions row component, we have to listen for this event. So what I'm going to do is go to the transactions row component HTML. Whenever there is an event on search, on the app search filters component, and I'm going to, whenever this event gets triggered, I'm going to run a function which is inside transactions row component. So I'm going to write a component, I'm going to write a function over here which will handle the on search event. So handle on search, this function will be triggered whenever you trigger the event on search. So we get an event over here. Event will be whatever value you pass. So I'll just do a console log over here. And simply going to remove this one. So there will be multiple console logs. And handle on search, and we pass the dollar event. And let's see how it looks. So whenever you type, okay, we are getting an error. Let's see what it is. Okay, I found out the mistake. The error is causing cause my function name and the input ID is the same. So I'll just simply rename this function to on search input, and I'll just copy this out over here, and let's check it out. So whenever I type, I'm getting this output emitted to the transactions row. And so once we receive this value, I need to modify the data inside the transactions row. But before we do that, I need to throttle this function. So basically what is happening now is, if you type a long list of numbers, so the function will get triggered 8 different times. That is really bad. So I want that as soon as the user stops typing, at that point of time, the function should get triggered. To do that, we have a really nice way in Angular using RxJS. So RxJS provides us a neat function called the bounce time, and I'm going to utilize that. Also, I'm going to utilize the observables over here. So I'm going to create a new subject, an observable subject that is going to be key up subject equals to new subject, and that is going to be just a type of string. Okay, string is not found. How is that possible? Okay, so this key up subject, I can keep it as private, or okay, never mind, I'll just keep it as private. This key up subject, I'm going to assign it to a function called on key up event. So I'm going to delete this for now, and I'm going to declare that function inside my constructor. So I'm just going to create a const over here. So this const, I'm going to name this function as on key up event is equal to this dot on key up subject, and I'm going to add a debounce time over here. So this function should run only between those delays. So debounce time I'm going to add as 250 milliseconds. Also make sure you have to add this debounce time into your main.ts file. I'm going to import it over here. After this, you also need to pass distinct util changed. So it detects whenever there is a change, it will trigger the function and it will cancel the previous one. Distinct until changed. Again, you have to import this inside your main, or you can even import it inside this same component. It's up to you. Distinct until changed. Also, I have to combine the observable. Since this is an observable, the data received, it's basically like a kind of a deferred object. So you have to combine all those observables into one. So I'm going to use Flatmap. Same thing, you have to import the Flatmap into your main.ts file. But Flatmap is not directly available to you. If you look at over here, Flatmap is not available. Flatmap is available inside mergeMap. So inside the Flatmap function, it is kind of a map. Whatever the value you receive, in this case, we receive a search term. So that search term is going to be returned as an observable with a delay. So I can just simply write it in one line, since I'm just going to return one thing. So I'm going to convert the search term into an observable now, and the search term is going to get transformed into an observable using observable of, and I'm going to add a delay of 100 milliseconds. So this delay should be lesser than the debounce time. Alright, also make sure you add the observable of method inside your main.ts file. But this doesn't come under operators, it comes under the observable, of course, of. Alright, so once we have transformed the search term into an observable, we have to subscribe to that observable. .subscribe, and whenever you subscribe, whenever there is a change, whenever there is a lot of functions are triggered, it is going to turn into an observable. We are subscribing to those observables, and we are going to emit the value which we received. So we are going to emit this dot on search emit, and emit the value. That's it. And let's just run this function on the key up event. So instead of passing this function, we are going to pass on key up event, that is on key up event. Oh, I'm so sorry, I totally forgot that we were creating a subject over here. So we created this key up subject. So this key up subject has a method called next and we can trigger that with a function. Either you can write a separate function over here or directly utilize it inside the key up event. So key up subject has a next method, and this next method needs to be passed the value of search input. So search input dot value, that's it. And let's check it out how it works. Okay, there is a delay does not exist on type string. Let's see what is this error. Okay, I'm so sorry, I think I forgot to add the delay as well into I forgot to import the delay inside the operators. And it should be fixed now. Refresh. And let's type something. As you can see, as soon as I stop typing, at that point of time the function gets triggered. So our debounce, or you could say throttling of function, is working perfectly fine. And the reason I added this as a constant is it's same as referencing. So if you declare this as a function reference, it will get stored inside the memory, but declaring it as a constant, it will run only once. It will get executed only when the constructor gets called. Okay, so the only thing remaining now is inside the transaction row, whenever we receive this event, we have to modify this data. Okay, let's see how we can do that. So instead of naming this as an event, we can just say term, and let's also add a check over here. If term.length is equal to 0, then we'll just simply won't execute this function. And if there is a term, we'll just modify the transaction which we have. So this dot transactions equals to this dot transactions dot filter. And so basically filter passes you the object which you currently have. So we'll be getting a lot of objects inside our array. So this object will return only if it matches the term. So I'm going to search for the merchant description. So I'll just search for this description, that is the merchant name. So I need to filter only those objects which match the term, or maybe contain the term inside the merchant description. So if object dot merchant, so this object is a type of you can even declare it over here. I'll just say log. It's a type of transaction. Log dot merchant. I'll just lower this case of the text to lowercase. Has this word, so index of term. So if it is not equal to -1, so this is the function parameter which we are passing. Log, I'll just add a space, and we are just returning. I'll just skip it to the next line just to make you clear what we are doing over here. So we are returning a boolean value over here. If it's true, it gets filtered out. So simply I'm going to write this in one line, and you can even keep it on one line over here again, and let's see how it works. I'll just refresh, and let's just type T. Let's see what happens. We get T, but there is a flaw. As soon as I head back, there is no data anymore. The reason behind that is, whenever you type, we are getting a value, but we are modifying the original transactions over here. So instead of doing this, we can make a copy of transactions. How? We'll see that. So whenever we receive the transactions, I'm going to trigger a function, a setter. This transactions will receive the value, or you can say it will receive all the transactions. This transaction will be stored inside another public object, or maybe public variable. I'll just call it as transactions log. We have to create it over here. This transactions log receives the copy of transactions. As well, I'm going to create another backup for the same log. I'll just name this as, but this time this is going to be a private, and this will be backup. So this dot transactions backup equals to transaction. So this, both of them gets the same value. One is a private and one is a public. So we have two variables now, transaction log and transaction backup. So instead of handling the term over here and modifying the original data, what we can do is, every time whenever we get a search term, we are going to set the transaction log to the original data, that is the transaction backup. If there is a search term, we will go ahead and modify the transactions log. Alright, it should work fine now. Let's see. Refreshed, and okay, there is an error. Okay, the reason behind that is we updated this, but we have to also update the HTML. And whenever you type something now, a data gets worked, and alright, it's working fine now. Now let's start working on the search filters span tags. So whenever we click on date, beneficiaries, or amount, the data should get sorted out. So going back to the search filters component, we have the span tags over here. Whenever you click any of them, the respective functions should get triggered. Also, inside the transactions row component, we have to handle the output of that filters. The only thing which we have to do with search filter is trigger a function called filter, which receives a value, and we have to emit this value. So I'll also add one more output over here called on filter is equal to new event emitter. So whenever there is a filter clicked, we are going to emit a new value, this dot on filter emit and the value. So this filter function looks something like this. So whenever you click, we are going to pass date, and same thing for the beneficiaries. We are going to pass beneficiaries over here, and the amount. But I don't like this that we are passing strings over here. Rather than passing strings, we can pass an enum variable, which we are going to export it over here. So this filters basically it states like filters.date and filters.beneficiaries, filters.amount. So it detects if the value is 1, we are sure that there is going to be a date. So rather than passing it as strings, we are going to just pass numbers, and inside the transactions row we are going to map those numbers to this values. So let's see how we are going to do this. I'm also going to write a function over here called handle sort, which will check what was the type of the filter. So whether it is a date or it's an amount. I'm going to use a switch. And now we have to map the cases to the type. So filters dot date. If it's date, we are going to run the particular thing. So we are just going to mention that this dot sort by date is true. Okay, by default, if you look at the design, the date filter is set to true. So as you can guess, sort by date is going to be a boolean over here. Equals to true, and the rest of them we are going to set it to false. Sort by beneficiaries, and sort by amount. These both are going to be set to false. If the case matches, we are going to set the sort by date to true. But basically this is going to be a toggle button. So whenever you click on this, whatever the state is, we have to toggle that. So it's simple. If it is previously it is true, then we are going to set it to false. If it is currently false, then we are going to set it to true. Simply just reverse the value. That's it. And whenever we reverse this value, we have to also change the up and down arrow over here. So simply that we are going to do with a class. First of all, let's just pass the values over here. Also write the style sheet or the classes for the up and down arrow. So instead of using after, I'm using before over here. Please note, inside Angular web components, the after procedure clause doesn't work. Yeah, so you have to use before. And let's just for now, let's just give it a class called up, and let's see what happens. Okay, you can see it is working, and if I pass it down, it works. And also see what are these errors. Fail to execute, click valued. Okay, Okay, so now we need to append this up and down class dynamically. Uh, Rather than typing the JavaScript inside the HTML, I'm going to type the required needed JavaScript. So the DOM manipulation, I'm going to write it inside the search filters component itself. Access the DOM elements inside the components, you have to use viewChild. So I'm going to use viewChild decorator. I'm going to fetch the date. So how did I get this date? It's simple. You have to assign this date, the span, the ID of the date. So that is like this, and same thing goes with the others. Now I can access this ID tags inside the component JavaScript, and I'm going to just call them as date public variable, and I'm going to just do the same thing for the rest of the values. All right, now I need to add, append, and modify the class name on the span date. So whenever we detect that the type is date, I'm going to update the class name. So it's very simple. To access the DOM object first, that is the date, and I'm going to get the native element. So I get the span. So I'm accessing the native element, that is the all the HTML properties like the class name, style, everything. So I'm going to update the class name, and I'm going to set the class name depending on the value of the sort by date boolean. So if the sort by is set to true, then I'm going to add the class up, else I'll just set the class to down. All right, but there's going to be one flaw over here. You'll see that soon. Now let's just do this for rest of the buttons quickly. All right, let's check what is that flaw now. Refresh. If I click on date, let's see why nothing is happening. The reason behind nothing is happening because I'd never call this function. So basically I need to pass this function over here, this dot handle sort, and pass the value or the type, and this filter function is called on each of the clicks of the filters. So let's see how it looks. Refresh. If I click on this, the arrow works, but look at this now. The feature or the interface how I want is, if I click on any of the filters, the other filters should turn disabled, or maybe the arrow should go away. So to do that, whenever we click on any of the filters, before appending or updating the class name, I'm going to remove the class name from all the spans and simply update the matching type. It's very simple. So I'm just quickly going to write a function over here called remove class, and remove class will remove class from all the native elements. So simply you have to get them all like this dot amount dot native element dot class name is equal to empty, and we have to do it for the rest of the buttons. And just simply call this function inside handle sort. That's it. Let's check it out how it works. So if we click, date works. Now if we click on beneficiaries, everything's working fine. Now the only thing remaining is we have to handle the on filter event inside the transactions row component. So I'm simply going to write a handle sort function over here, and on filter, whenever this event gets triggered, we have to call this function handle sort, and we get the value or the type. And for now, let's just do a console log over here. Whenever the on filter event gets emitted, we are going to run the handle sort function, and I'm going to pass the event, and let's see how it looks. And go to the console. Whenever I click on date, I get 1, beneficiary is 2, and amount is 3. So we have to map the enum that we created over here. I'm just simply going to import it inside the transactions row. For now, I'm just simply going to write a function called handle sort date. So whenever we detect that the enum is 1, we are going to trigger this function. So for now, let's just do a console log handle sort. So I want this function to be triggered based on a switch case. So let's just do a switch case over here. If the type matches, so if the case is filters, and we can get this filters imported now over here from these search filters. If this filters.date case matches, then we are simply going to trigger this function handle and break it. And let's see if it works. I'm clicking on beneficiaries, nothing is happening. And if I click on date, you can see the handle sort date triggers. Same thing, we have to write the function for beneficiaries and amount, but before doing that, simply I'm going to handle the sort date first. I'm going to copy this booleans from filters because I'm going to need them. So this dot sort by date will get toggled whenever the handle sort function gets triggered. Now I need to modify the transaction log same as how we did it in this handle on search. So I'm just simply going to copy this function and paste it over here. But in this case, we don't have to worry about losing the old data because we are not going to remove or modify any data. We are just simply going to sort the data. So instead of using filter, we are going to use the sort function over here. But if you know about the JavaScript, sort function emits or the passes two parameters. It compares the first and the second value in the object or the array, and it returns based on the -1 and 1. So I'm going to pass log A. Log A is going to be a type of transaction, and I'm again going to pass a log B, just a transaction log, and it's going to be a type of transaction again. So over here, I'm going to do an if else condition over here. If so, all I have to do is check if it is sort by date is set to true. Then I'm going to check for a certain value. If it is sort by date, I'm going to check if the value of log A, if the value of log B is bigger than the value of log A. We can simply do that by return. Most of the times I get confused with this. You can just fiddle with which one you should minus first. In this case, I'm just going to minus the value of, compare the log B first, dot transaction date minus log A dot transaction date, else the reverse of this. Let's see how it works and refresh. So now if you click on date, your value should be getting sorted by date. Alright, it works. We have to do the same thing for the rest of the filters. So I'll take care of beneficiaries. Just going to copy this and simply going to replace this. Also, I'm going to add one more case over here. Dot beneficiaries. And update the function name, handle sort beneficiaries. Same thing for the amount. Okay, we'll update this function afterwards. But for the beneficiaries, so same thing, there is going to be no change. This function will remain the same, except instead of comparing the transaction date, we are going to compare the merchant text. So simply do the same thing. And I'm just going to copy this function again. And this is going to be sort amount. And as you can guess, all I have to update is the amount. It's going to be amount. All right. Looks good. And let's check it out. So whenever we emit an event, the handle sort function gets triggered. And depending on the switch case, we are triggering the functions. So let's see how it works. Okay, there's something wrong. 72. Oh, I'm so sorry. Instead of doing the minus over here, since this is a text, you have to check if it is greater than. So simply just check if, so merchant name, if it is less than the log B merchant, and same thing with this one. All right, same thing goes with the amount as well, because we are receiving a string over here. It's actually a text, it's a number, but you can compare that with the string also. All right, let's see how it works. All right, everything is working fine now. Beneficiaries are working fine as well. All right, so we are done with the building and complete Angular 4 application. I hope enjoyed this video. If my speed was very fast, please post it in the comments. Also, it would be really helpful if you tell me if I'm doing any mistakes while teaching you. If my explanations are not well, please let me know in the comments. I'll also post the entire code to the GitHub link in the descriptions. And make sure you like and subscribe to my channel. It will really motivate me to keep on adding new videos for you. Hey, apart from this video, I really like this channel called Angular Firebase by Jeff. He even has written an ebook on Angular 4, so don't forget to check it out. Link for your free copy of this book is in the description below. Thank you.